Star Wars, The Mandalorian, and Grogu is continuing to collapse at the box office, with yet another sharp decline of 63% week over week, barely scraping in $9 million. They are currently under $300 million right now worldwide. This is well behind the previously worst Star Wars movie ever, Solo: A Star Wars Story, which failed to even reach $400 million in its run, ending globally at $394. And they lost Disney a huge pile of cash in the process. Now, this new film is less expensive, but they're still going to lose $100 million at its current trajectory. The Mandalorian and Grogu might be lucky to scrape in another 50 to 100 million in its current run here, and quite possibly might do less depending on what happens. Either way, Disney, I'm expecting they're going to lose about $100 million when all is said and done with this project. And this could also be the final nail in the coffin for Star Wars as a brand. Because The Mandalorian was their best bet. It's the only show that had had any kind of real excitement over the last decade. Some people liked Andor, but nobody watched it, so there's not really much there. So let's take a look at an article talking about this. This is a That Park Place discussing this by Marvin Montanaro, who says The Mandalorian and Grogu box office collapse continues as third weekend tracking points to another massive drop. Disney and Lucasfilm's The Mandalorian and Grogu appears headed for yet another disastrous weekend at the box office, with new industry tracking suggesting the film could fall another 63% in its third frame and finish the week with just 9 million domestically. The projection comes from industry tracking account Exhibitor Relations Co., which posted on X that the film was looking at a third weekend haul of approximately 9 million, bringing its domestic total to around 155. If those numbers hold, it would mark yet another brutal chapter in what has quickly become one of the most disappointing theatrical runs in modern Star Wars history. The warning signs were far from the beginning. Despite being the franchise's first theatrical release in 7 years, The Mandalorian and Grogu opened with the lowest debut of any Disney Star Wars film. The movie earned approximately $82 million over its 3-day weekend, and $97 million across the 4-day Memorial Day frame, finishing below Solo: A Star Wars Story and far below the heights once associated with the franchise. Yeah, it is nowhere near where it used to be. Star Wars is in a place of decay that I don't think anyone ever dreamed it would be. Not in our lifetimes, anyway. Now, the film's second weekend delivered a devastating 69% drop, so that was the previous week, and 63% this week, falling to roughly 25 million domestically. Industry observers immediately began comparing the decline to some of the worst second-week performances in franchise history, and at the same time, two low-budget horror films completely stole the spotlight. So now they're going to go talk about how other films begin to steal the spotlight for poor old Star Wars. Boo, hoo, hoo. Now look, none of this should come as a surprise. I mean, come on. Especially to Disney. They should know better. Because for years now, Disney has attacked their own fans. They've been spitting in the faces of people who loved Star Wars. They spat in the face of George Lucas, told him to take his original treatment and pound sand. He called them white slavers. He got a lot of grief for that.
These are my kids. So
all those Star Wars films.
All the Star Wars films.
They were your kids.
Yeah, well, they are right. You know, I loved them. I created them. I'm very intimately involved in them, and obviously to
and
sell
you
them
sold
off,
them.
I sold them to the white slavers that take these things and.
Okay, but
Disney didn't care. You can't inject LGBTQ plus barbecue at every turn and tell the male audience that the Force is now female and, you can go pound sand and push diversity at every turn and add a lot of gayness to Star Wars and expect that the core audience who loved the original trilogies and the prequel trilogies and George Lucas as a whole to remain en masse. You cannot have then Kathleen Kennedy and her other acolytes telling people who are complaining about the new direction of Star Wars to just, go leave. We don't need you. And somehow expect to grow your brand. This has never, ever worked. Not for Star Wars, not for any other brand, anywhere, ever. Look at Star Trek. Look at Indiana Jones. Look at Doctor Who. It's all been brand destruction for all of them. And it's also unnecessary, so self-inflicted. And this doesn't even count the amount of slop that Star Wars was putting out, the Disney Star Wars was putting out. So not only did you have all these problems with the content that you created, but then you put an endless stream of it to make sure that nobody could miss the face of new Star Wars. Terrible storytelling, retarded character arcs, disrespecting the lore at every turn. And all to feed the Disney Plus beast. The decline of Star Wars likely would have taken a lot longer had it not been for this endless stream of crap being poured down people's faces. Again and again, people would come back to watch the next series hoping that this was the time where everything would look better. And every time it didn't, you'd lose another chunk of fans. And on it went until finally we get to Mando and Grogu. And there seems to be barely a whisper left coming from the fans. There are little pockets here and there, and there's also the shill groups who are getting paid to love it. But outside of them, there is no mass excitement. There is no huge discussions happening all over the internet or in real life discussing the film and what could it be about. Star Wars is a dead man walking franchise, and Disney killed it. And I think that's really sad. Because for people like myself, who grew up with the original trilogies and who, for the most part enjoyed the prequels, they weren't as good, but they were fun in their own way, in their own right. There will always be those Star Wars trilogies to enjoy. But for a lot of people, I think sharing Star Wars to the next generation, their love of it, is going to be less of a thing than it otherwise would have. Because if you look around and everything Star Wars now is garbage that you don't want to consume yourself, and maybe your kids, you don't want them to see that, you might be less likely to share Star Wars. And because of this, we could be seeing the final dying gasps of a brand once the greatest movie franchise in American history take place. And that makes me sad because, Star Wars was a love of mine when I was a kid. It's one of the reasons why I give Mark Hamill a pass because, in his latter years, he's kind of lost it. But it was hard not to like the guy. So, I don't know. It's sad to see. And we'll have to wait and find out what happens with Star Wars in the future. But I don't have high hopes for there to be a turning point as long as Disney remains at the helm.